Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a closer look at the Status Pro X. These are a pair of true wireless buds which have been receiving a pretty significant industry push as of late, labeled by many as the best pair of true wireless buds in 2025. So I was curious and wanted to see if those claims are true, but spoiler alert, these are in fact excellent sounding wireless headphones. In fact, compared to the best of the best, we're talking about Sennheiser's Momentum 4s, the newest Apple AirPod Pro 3s, as well as Sony wireless buds. I would say these are even a notch higher in terms of absolute pure audio quality. Again, if you are a very discerning audiophile hi-fi listener. So if we had to rank them on a scale of 1 to 10, I would place most of the others, including the Sennheiser Momentum 4s, at around 8.5 out of 10, and these would get closer to maybe a 9 or 9.2 out of 10, delivering surprisingly crisp and detailed trebles, shockingly deep and playful bass, effective active noise cancellation, all in a stylish design that had no issues when it came to pairing and connectivity. And all of this is coupled with pretty much every single feature under the sun when it comes to wireless headphones at this point in time, including an automatic play and pause proximity sensor. There's support for Qi wireless charging on the battery case, which also has some metal accents on the top. It includes all of the codecs that we've come to expect, including LDAC support for 3 times more detailed transmission using Bluetooth, and the impressive audio quality is through a combination of great tuning as well as the hardware on these using triple drivers or 3 speakers on each of these sides. More specifically, there's a 12mm dynamic driver and then dual Knowles balanced armature drivers, so they're responsible for slightly different frequency ranges, working in combination to create the illusion that these are larger headphones or speakers. And yet impressively, despite powering 3 speakers or drivers on each side, they still can last you 8 hours continuous music listening when being worn with active noise cancellation turned on. So with ANC off, that can stretch closer to around 9 to 10 hours before you have to recharge them again in the battery case. Really feels like there's almost no expenses spared. But why am I frustrated about these pair of headphones? Well, it really comes down to price point. You're gonna have to pay a pretty penny, and in the case of the Status Pro X, I feel like that's almost to the extreme. For instance, they officially retail right now for $300. I mean, that is the most expensive pair of wireless headphones I think I've ever seen. That's more expensive than even Apple's AirPod Pro 3s, which sit at $250. Granted, there are some promotions that occasionally come through, and I've seen it during launch, for example, sit close to around $250, but even so, this is far from a budget or excellent value, quote-unquote, pair of headphones, again, really designed for people that are looking for the best absolute sound quality possible and are willing to pay up. But ideally, I would say they would have priced this thing at retail for maybe $50, if not even $100 less. I think that could have made it even more competitive, but such is the nature of this economy. And what makes it even more frustrating, in my opinion, is the fact that you can actually find some of their previous generation devices at a pretty steep discount. For example, the Between Pros, which are also from them and have a triple driver setup. Granted, the drivers inside here are a little bit smaller in size, so don't pack quite as much volume. The bass as well as trebles aren't quite as crystal clear and dramatic, and also the Between Pros are missing active noise cancellation, but still they have a stylish design, great sound, and now can be found for just $100 give and take, if you're okay with no ANC. Furthermore, they later came out with the Between 3 ANCs, which are more of the direct predecessor compared to the Pro X's over here, and these ones do have active noise cancellation, just like the Status Pro, and also have triple drivers. Granted, the 3 ANCs were using a slightly older Bluetooth chip and also lacked high-res LDAC support. So technically, the 3 ANCs were not high-res audio wireless certified, which was a little bit of a shame, but still offered excellent performance using 3 drivers. Granted, these 3 drivers are also a little smaller versus these newest pairs. For instance, this one had a 10mm dynamic driver versus the 12mm on here, and again, upgrades to 2 Knowles drivers instead. But the 3 ANCs can be found for around $150 on sale right now, which is essentially half the price of the Pro X. So here's the thing. In comparison, the Pro X's definitely have better audio performance. Don't get me wrong, using the larger, newer drivers, having a newer Bluetooth chip, making them high-res certified, and adding in all of the other certifications like Google Fast Pair support, proximity sensor for auto play and pause when you remove the headphones when not being worn, which were also missing on the previous between 3A and Cs. Again, these are all great new additions, but is it worth 2 times the price? That is the much harder question to answer. And so honestly speaking, comparing them side by side, I would say the previous 3 ANCs are closer to maybe an 8, 8.5 out of 10 compared to 9 or 9.2 out of 10 for the Pro X's. But we are talking about chasing incremental gains because honestly, the previous pairs already passed the threshold of sounding excellent. And once you reach into the territory of getting closer and closer to perfection, it looks like you have to pay exponentially more, which is why, again, for the casual listener, for the typical consumer, it probably no longer makes sense at a certain point, and we have to just say something is good enough, but perhaps Status Audio knows that, which is why they're continuing to sell their previous 3 ANCs and their original triple driver headphones on their site as well, delivering a more cost-effective choice. And in a similar sense, we also checked out another pair of triple driver headphones recently, which were the Soundpeats H3, and these ones are also about half the price of the Status Pro X. I thought the H3s also offered excellent performance, but if we're pairing them side by side directly with the Pro X slightly edges out ahead, I mean, these are also getting very close. I would honestly rate them maybe around 8.8 out of 10, but honestly, it's not a night and day difference. With that being said, because the H3 are still more affordable, there of course are some corners they had to cut to reach a lower price point. For instance, there is no wireless charging support on the battery case, so if we pop it onto a charging mat, actually nothing will really happen compared to with the Pro X as well as the previous 3 A and C. Both of these will actually start charging once you just pop them on for some added convenience. And perhaps a more significant difference is going to be the addition of 6 beam-forming microphones on here, what they call voice loom, providing you with very clear audio quality when it comes to voice calls using the stem type design. That means aside from excellent audio quality, these are also excellent for phone calls. Dot-shaped or IEM-shaped design, they're pointed further from the mouth, and so it's not quite as clear when it comes to the mic quality. So again, there's no question that the Pro X's perform like a true flagship, showing impressive attention to detail, but again, perhaps expected for a pair at this price point. Now, if we had to be really critical though, and just point out a couple of things that I would have liked to see, considering they are so expensive, would be, even though they have a newer Bluetooth chip, version 5.3, but since these are coming out late 2025 as we head into 2026, I would have liked them to use something like Bluetooth 6.0 instead for added future proofing. I mean, yes, there's very few smartphones and devices that have a Bluetooth 6 chip anyways, so you can't really take full advantage of it just yet, but maybe in a couple of months, we'll start to see that become more commonly available on consumer devices, providing additional benefits in battery efficiency as well as further reduced latency and perhaps sending even more detail wirelessly. So those are a couple of gains that would have been nice to see, and I just point that out because we have checked out a pair of wireless buds already, including some from Earfun that have started to use Bluetooth 6 chips inside. Furthermore, keep in mind that if you want to take advantage of the LDAC audio codec, this codec is currently only compatible with Android smartphones, so keep that in mind that iPhones, iOS devices currently don't support LDAC. Now, I realize that this is not a problem that's unique to only the Status Pro X's. Other headphones with LDAC face a similar situation, so just keep that in mind. Again, the drivers as well as the tuning already sounds excellent, bordering on amazing, but if you are an absolute audiophile, for the best listening experience, you would be pairing it with an Android device at this point in time. Though note that it doesn't have any Qualcomm codecs on board, including Qualcomm aptX lossless, for instance, which is perhaps the only logo that we don't see under the impressive number of stickers here on the back. Couple of final points here. With the battery case combined, you can get around 24 hours of listening when on the road, again around 8 to 10 hours of continuous music listening when being warm, and they have IP55 ratings, so for splashes in the rain as well as for sweat, it's going to be water resistant. Now the casing here next to the Status 3 ANC from before is just a touch smaller and also feels a little bit more refined and premium. We have a metal lid compared to entirely plastic on the previous model, so the hinge are still both made out of metal. standard USB Type-C on the back if you don't want to use wireless charging. Now, one aspect that I did like a little bit more about the three ANCs is they offered two color choices. Yes, there is the black color available, but also a bone or kind of a white or silver edition that you can also pick between, whereas on the Pro X's now only come in the black alloy color, so there's no more lighter shade. In terms of the visuals of the actual buds, you can see they are definitely similar in terms of coming from the same company, having that kind of two-tone finish, reminiscent of some Google Pixel devices, but on the Pro X it now uses a slanted design compared to a completely flat two-piece on the previous three ANCs. Also, side by side, impressively, the overall dimensions of the Pro X are even smaller, so it's lighter, more comfortable for wearing, despite the fact they're packing larger speakers with the same battery life as well. So this is actually pretty cool to see from an engineering point of view. Also, what I will say is that the fit and finish on the Pro X's here, I have to admit, are a slight step up. So the seam, when it comes to transitioning between the plastic polycarbonate and the metal pieces, feel like they're almost fused together. It's almost seamless compared to on the previous three ANC. There was a bit more of a rough edge as you're running your finger across it. Both pairs continue to use a combination of physical buttons on the very top to give you some tactility. If you prefer to use that, maybe if you're wearing gloves, in addition to touch controls on the front for simple taps, giving you the ability to choose. Just simple charging contacts and microphones on the back. And then here on the rear, it still uses a pretty similar design when it comes to the ergonomics. Furthermore, the mesh covering the drivers or speakers on the Pro X's are now made out of metal compared to a fabric covering the mesh on the three ANCs, which were perhaps a little bit more delicate, not quite as easy to clean, compared to the slightly improved metal mesh on the Pro X's over here. So this is what it looks like side by side. Again, just a slight reduction there overall in all dimensions when it comes to the weight as well as the ergonomics. And here they are against the Soundpeats H3 as reference, which are also triple driver wireless buds, which you can see here are about the same in terms of general dimensions, I would say. Again, when it comes to packing in more drivers or speakers inside, you're always going to have a slightly larger chassis versus a single driver pair. When it comes down to physics, you still need more space to put in one speaker compared to three speakers. But again, I honestly found the Pro X's to be comfortable enough when I was wearing them for around 5 to 6 hours continuously that I didn't encounter any stress or strain. So I thought it was really quite good, even if you can still find lighter pairs of wireless buds on the market. Status Audio also claims that the Pro X's here were designed based on feedback from the previous three ANCs, again making it feel more like an evolution, and they have received already a Red Dot Design Award. The active noise cancellation, by the way, has also been slightly amped up, now represses up to 52 decibels of sound, so if you're wearing them on a plane or on a bus, I would say they have been very effective for me in blocking out most of the engine sounds and fan noises, matching most of the flagship wireless headphones that I've tried out in terms of general effectiveness. Again, the fit here remained relatively secure as well, so for light movements when it comes to jogging, doing some sports, walking around the day-to-day, they still felt pretty secure despite lacking a more obvious loop on the outside. And again, more specifically, LDAC here is rated for 24-bit 96 kHz audio. Also, here's a closer look at that entire capacitive region, which is touch sensitive, a pretty large surface compared to most wireless buds, which is only a single point. Furthermore, you can still use your companion app available for both iOS and Android, including additional EQs that you can adjust for shaping the sound, in addition to having a now Find My feature using kind of a connected GPS mode, which can track its last known location on a map, which is another new software feature not found on previous generation models. As for some additional packaging contents, you'll just find some spare silicone tips to get a more snug fit, large, small, and medium, as well as a standard USB Type-C charging cable is also included, plus a user guide, which is actually pretty well documented, walking through all the main features as well as components that they're using on the inside. But again, it's kind of expected to have a slightly higher end fit and finish as well as presentation. Jumping into their companion app here, just turning on Bluetooth and location services, we'll see a pop-up notification as part of Android's fast pair, similar to with AirPods and the iPhone ecosystem. You'll be able to then pair it to your Google account. Directly in Bluetooth settings, we'll be able to see the battery life on the left, right side, as well as the case itself, as well as ring a chime or alarm on the left and right sides directly using Android operating system without opening up the companion app. And the app here is relatively well organized, I would say. We have the same battery status indicator on the very top, checking if there's any firmware updates available, as well as the ability to turn ANC on, compared to the ambient mode, aka the audio transparency mode, which instead uses the microphones to amplify the noises around you so you can have awareness of your surroundings without removing the buds or have a conversation. You can actually go through a couple of modes on here as well, including a lower level versus medium, high, or a super high for the level of magnification, similar to hearing aids in a way. With that being said, it seems like when it comes to active noise cancellation, there aren't additional manual modes for you to change the intensity yourself, similar to with ambient. There is no kind of low, medium, or high, which might have been interesting to see. It's doing all of this automatically behind the scenes, adjusting for the intensity based on your environment, but would have been nice to also have some manual override controls. Now further down below here, there's also going to be the EQ options. So there is the status signature, which is their default tuning, which to be honest, already sounds excellent for, I would say, 90% of audio tracks I tried listening to it with. So very good out-of-the-box tuning, but if that's not satisfactory for you, you can also go into an audiophile mode, which offers a slightly more neutral listening experience. The bass as well as trebles aren't as emphasized, but perhaps it's more as the artist intended, a little more real to life. There's also a Knowles preferred mode, which is using those, again, balanced drivers inside, as well as a podcast mode for speech, vocal enhance mode, and you can also add a custom mode here using the frequency sliders to adjust yourself. With that being said, what you won't find on here would be a custom hearing test mode, which some of the flagship buds from Soundcore by Anchor, as well as SoundPeats, are starting to offer in the software, playing back a series of sounds and then asking you to tap if you prefer version 1 or 2. Are you able to hear the audio, yes or no? Making it a little easier to create a custom EQ profile using the software. That is still something they haven't added on their app at the moment, instead relying exclusively on these frequency sliders, which are a little bit more technical. But again, I guess their products are more catered towards audiophiles as well. Still, it would be nice to have that software mode added. Further down below here, we can remap the touch controls, including disabling the touch controls if you find it to be too distracting, only using the buttons on the top instead. And for customization, we can change it into a single tap, double tap, triple tap, tap and hold for the left and right sides, including adjusting volume as well, which we can also remap to other functions just by tapping over there. Although interestingly, the physical hard buttons are not customizable, which is a little bit of a shame. Would have liked to see the same flexibility as the touch controls, but it is what it is. Finally, down below here, you can find multi-point connectivity, which allows you to pair with 2 devices simultaneously. That can be your phone and laptop at the same time, and it will switch back and forth based on whatever device is currently playing back audio. There's also a function here called side tone, which is essentially allowing you to hear your own voice by adding some of that in as you're maybe speaking when making a phone call, kind of like a real-time feedback mode. So as you're recording audio, you'll be able to hear if you're talking too loudly and what it sounds like. That's a feature I haven't seen before on other wireless buds. You can locate the headphones again using sound to play a chime very loudly, or using the connected GPS location feature telling us that right now it's very close, 0 miles from you. The proximity there is determined using Bluetooth. Nice to have. And then under the gear icon here, we can find additional options. For example, with audio prompts. So by default, it will chime when it's turning on and off, providing you with some audible confirmation, but you can turn those prompts on and off as well. And furthermore, there's something called dynamic EQ, which is interesting that you can turn on and off. It's more applicable to lower listening levels or lower volume levels, in which this dynamic EQ mode will subtly bump up the bass and treble a little bit more to make the experience a little more satisfying without having to really bump up the volume quite as much. Essentially, a EQ profile for low volume listening can be found there. Strangely though, when it comes to codecs, it looks like we don't have as much manual control in the system settings as I expected. There is no low latency dedicated mode, for example, which is interesting. Would have expected to see that, even though Bluetooth 5.3 has already gotten quite good, but maybe if you're playing back a higher frame rate game and you want the audio and video to be synced together perfectly, there is no dedicated mode that you can toggle through. Hopefully they can add that in, but what it means is currently they are very much focused on music. I'm not actually seeing a manual toggle in the app either for activating LDAC or disabling it. which is honestly a little bit strange. So my assumption is on compatible, again, Android devices, it's just always going to be activated once you open them up and start listening to music, but there's no way to really turn that off. Again, similar to the automatic ANC intensity situation, would like to see a little bit more of granular manual control provided. Luckily, when it comes to audio quality and performance, as we've kind of spoiled already at the beginning of this video, that is definitely the highlight. They are, if not getting very close, the top of the class, and that includes Bose's Quiet Comfort Buds. Even compared to the Sennheisers as well as Sonys of the world, these are delivering an upgrade in terms of sound, if that's even possible. But again, you do have to be coming from one of those previous pairs, I feel, to really hear that difference and just really listen closely to studio albums to appreciate it. Packing in even more refined audio performance, better sound versus the 3 ANCs in a more compact and comfortable experience if you're listening to them for hours and hours on end. Bluetooth connectivity was also very stable. Thankfully, never encountered any disconnections in my testing. There was no real hissing or humming of any kind in the background, so it was clean audio coming through. And to their credit, even though there is no dedicated low latency mode, for just basic things like watching YouTube videos, honestly, the video and audio were synced together pretty well in my testing. But as we touched on previously, if having something that's more well-rounded in terms of value is your number one criteria, the irony here is maybe some of their previous pairs, which are not quite as great, but close enough, while delivering significant cost savings, might actually be something more interesting as well. But there's no question when it comes to sound quality, perhaps the most important criteria when it comes to headphones at the end of the day, these are currently sitting pretty at the top of the class. So in conclusion, the bass is tight, it's clean, well controlled, mids remain natural and smooth, whereas trebles are extremely impressive. It never gets too sibilant, harsh, or piercing while still presenting very forward-sounding vocals. Excellent resolution, soundstage is also fairly wide-sounding for a pair of smaller buds, creating the illusion at times that you're wearing larger headphones than they are in reality. So here's a test of the microphone quality. Right now I'm speaking when wearing the Status Pro X wireless buds. Status Pro X wireless buds. How do I sound? Test 1, 2, 3. So as you can hear, their overall audio performance has been quite clean sounding, again using the beamforming microphones scattered across the entire chassis of these wireless buds. So that is more or less it as far as our hands-on closer look at the Status Audio Pro X. Again, offering some of the best that you can find when it comes to the actual drivers and tuning, the audio performance that is, in the flagship wireless bud category. But you are paying almost an arm and a leg to get that, which leaves me feeling torn, because the budget shopper in me is kind of wincing at that price point, considering that these wireless headphones, in a way, are still disposable products. In a couple of years, when the battery starts to fall apart, unless you are really savvy at replacing these parts, you'll probably be swapping it out for a different pair of headphones altogether, compared to a traditional wired pair of headphones, which doesn't have any batteries you can continue to use for years and years down the road. So as impressive as these are when it comes to sound quality, very stylish design, and excellent hardware, if I'm going to be completely honest, I personally wouldn't spend, I would say, more than maybe $200 on a pair of wireless headphones. But again, I totally understand that there are audiophiles out there looking for the absolute best when it comes to enjoying studio albums. They want to squeeze out as much detail possible out of their tracks when on the go with a convenient form factor like these. That makes them impressive from an audio point of view. But yeah, the audiophile world is definitely kind of crazy. But if you are willing to splurge and you want to have no expenses spared at getting you the best audio currently available in 2025 wireless buds, this is certainly going to be a choice, at least, to keep on your radar. Also to see if the price dips when it comes to sales and promotions during the holiday season. So you can check out more details if you're interested in something like this, and let me know in the comments down below how you feel about something like this. Do you think it is going to be very niche? Anything that you guys would like to see added if they make a next generation revision from this point? For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That has been the Status Audio Pro X.